So in 80 years, we've evolved from a shelter to being a shelter and mental health treatment services. And we estimate that we've probably served about 80,000 children in our history. What we've been doing this last year is really embracing our name. So to receive means to accept, means to welcome, means to bear the weight. And we really, without community support, are not going to be able to continue to receive children without our community coming together. And we really want to be able to give kids the opportunity to heal, to find hope, and to become all the greatness that they can be.
Hi, I'm Jeff Holden. Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. Our purpose and passion is to highlight a nonprofit organization in each weekly episode, giving that organization an opportunity to tell their story in their words to better inform and educate the respective communities they serve, as well as provide one more tool for them to share their message to constituents and donors. Our goal is to help build stronger communities through shared voices and to both encourage and support the growth of local nonprofit organizations through podcasting. Thanks to our partners for their support in getting these stories told. CapTrust, fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations, and Western Health Advantage, a full-service healthcare plan for individuals, employer groups, and families. I'm proud to welcome our newest partner to the program, CORE, Interim and Fractional Executive Leadership, Comprehensive Back Office Support Services. We work in it so you can work on it. Visit cxore.com. The Children's Receiving Home of Sacramento holds a very personal place in my story that you'll hear in the episode. More importantly in this conversation, you'll hear a far deeper story than my connection, one that spans 80 years of protecting kids, healing trauma, and reimagining what safety can look like for vulnerable youth. I'm joined by CEO Glynis Butler-Stone, whose own journey began as a college volunteer in a tiny point store closet, and eventually led her to lead the organization through a global pandemic and a massive shift in how children's services are funded. You'll also hear from Amber Robbins, a successful nonprofit leader herself who entered the Children's Receiving Home as a scared little girl fleeing violence, who now returns as a powerful advocate and partner, using her lived experience to expand hope and housing for others. Together, we explore how a wartime shelter grew into a campus of mental health treatment, trauma-informed preschool, suicide prevention, and a bold new vision to turn vacant beds into a vibrant hub for transition-age youth and families in crisis. If you care about kids, foster youth, mental health, or simply what it means to give children a true sense of safety and dignity, this is a conversation you'll definitely appreciate. Glynis Butler-Stone, Amber Robbins, welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I am really excited to have this conversation, and you'll know why in just a second. So before we actually get going, I have something to share that's in full transparency. The Children's Receiving Home really holds a special place in my heart for a very different way than what we're going to be addressing. I met the woman I would eventually marry when we were working on a fundraiser for the organization, and she was the HR person and staff development trainer. So my wife was an employee there for about 8 years as it was being built into its current iteration. Now we can get on with the story.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, very cool.
So Glynis, let's start with a little history for the benefit of those that are not as familiar with the organization.
Okay.
First and foremost, what has the Children's Receiving Home been doing for roughly the last 80 years?
Well, we were founded in 1944 by the Rotary of Sacramento and the Junior League of Sacramento. And the original intention was it was part of the war efforts to be able to help families that were impacted by World War II with men and women going off to serve their country and not having places for children to stay. So that was where we started. Fast forward to the 1960s, and we began to serve a population of youth that were abused and neglected and were served by Child Protective Services. And so that's where our partnership with Sacramento County Child Protective Services really started in the 60s. And we built the campus that we're on right now, which is 6 acres and has 100 beds on this particular campus. We then, about 2000, determined that the kids that we were serving really had intensive mental health treatment needs. So we've added a whole contingent of mental health services to our programs that we offer now. So in 80 years, we've evolved from a shelter to being a shelter and mental health treatment services. And we estimate that we've probably served about 80,000 children in our history.
Which is amazing, just amazing.
Yeah.
This is not your first rodeo at the Children's Receiving Home
No,
either.
it's not.
So tell us a little bit about that. What brought you back as CEO?
Well, I actually have an interesting journey because I started off when I was in college as a volunteer. To earn college credits, and I could pick a charity that I could go volunteer for, and I picked the Receiving Home. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about kids in foster care, and I had the honor of running what's called the Point Store, and Amber does remember the Point Store. It's a very
I remember the Point Store.
It's a very special closet.
Yes.
It's a closet to adults, but to children it's magical, and so it hooked me because the kids could earn points. They could buy toys and candy and goodies and makeup now and cologne and such. And so I ended up staying on for 2 years. It was only supposed to be a 2-semester project, but I stayed for 2 years. And then I went on to receive my master's, started working in social work, and was hired on to serve as the director of clinical services in 2007 at the Children's Receiving Home. In 2011, I decided I wanted to spread my wings and learn about adoption because we were seeing a lot of kids that were adopted coming back into the system, coming back into the receiving home, and I wanted to see if I could be a part of a solution for that issue for our kids. And then in 2018, the CEO, after 23 years, had wanted to retire. So he asked me to come back to help him in his succession planning and his retirement. So I became CEO in June of 2020 in the midst of a global pandemic. And that's exactly when you want to become a new CEO.
Right.
We had 50 kids on our campus trying to keep them safe, keep the staff coming to work. It was quite the challenge, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
That's an amazing journey. That is truly a journey from internship to CEO. Well, congratulations on the accomplishment, too, because that's not easy to do.
No, thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about the programs, the services you currently provide, because they've changed dramatically from obviously the orientation to the mid-cycle of the organization to where we are today. What is the scope of the programs that you offer for the children?
Well, we actually have quite a continuum of services that we do offer on our 6-acre campus. We still have our shelter program. It's now a 10-day model, and we work with kids from Child Protective Services, Sacramento County, who are either in between placements, are working their way to go home, are waiting for group home placements that are available. And so the idea is that's a really temporary stay for them. And we work with kids primarily 11 to 17 years of age.
Thank you. I was just about to ask the ages.
Particular program. So we still have our shelter. We have a small residential treatment program that works with kids who really need intensive mental health treatment services before they can live in a family. And so those kids stay with us between 6 months and 2 years. They are typically kids struggling with depression, anxiety, suicidality, some really intense trauma responses for those kids. So we have those 2 housing programs on our campus. We then have what we call a partial hospitalization program, which is a day treatment program for kids living at home. And they can come to our campus. It's a 5 to 10-day program. And those kids, we're trying to prevent hospitalization. So a lot of those kids are suffering from depression, anxiety, suicide attempts. And so we are a bridge for them to be able to stay with their families and get really intensive mental health treatment in a short period of time.
In terms of the programs, who identifies the child to be appropriate for the program?
It depends on the program. For the shelter and the short-term residential program, the county determines that, and they
Okay.
do the referrals. For the partial hospitalization program, parents can actually refer if they have the proper insurance. They can refer to that program.
Okay, good. We can come back to the insurance
Yes.
part of that too a little bit later
Yes.
in the conversation.
Yeah, and we actually have two other programs I want to make sure to highlight.
Yeah.
Because we have our Sprouts Trauma-Informed Preschool, and that's for our youngest survivors of abuse and neglect. Those are little ones 2 to 5 years of age that some are foster children, some are not. Some have just experienced pretty significant trauma in their life, and they're not able to regulate themselves to be able to be in traditional preschool programs. Many have been kicked out of Head Start, which is hard for me to believe with these little guys. But they come to us for about a year, and our goal is to get them ready to go to a traditional preschool or to kindergarten.
Oh, that's awesome.
That program, yeah. And the last one we have is we do have a community outreach program. It's a suicide prevention program that works with foster youth, former foster youth, LGBTQ youth to help with suicide prevention, as well as help housing, find housing, work development, and mental health services and such too. So we do a whole continuum of service provision within our organization.
Glynis, on the Sprouts program, how do the children interface with the organization? Do they live there? Are
They don't live
housed
there.
Okay, so it's like an outpatient.
Yes, it's an outpatient
thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we have the two housing programs, which is our shelter and our residential treatment.
Okay.
And then the other programs are all outpatient. So kids come to the campus for service.
And the next logical question is going to be, how do they get there and get back to where they come from?
Well, especially for the Sprouts, that's actually part of our contract is that we have a contract with Placer County Behavioral Health. And so our staff, our teachers actually transport the kids to and from preschool every day.
And you mentioned Placer County.
Yes.
Yet, obviously, you're Sacramento County. What is the scope? What's the geography that you're servicing?
Well, we would love to be servicing Sacramento County children, but at this point in time, the funding that we have available is only through Placer County. Placer County came up with this idea of having a regional trauma-informed preschool, and they were hoping that Sacramento County would jump on board, which they haven't as of yet. So we're hopeful in some of our reinvention we'll be able to serve Sacramento County kids.
And that's
that
just
program.
for the Sprouts program.
For the Sprouts. The rest
of the
is all
programs.
Sacramento.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Make sure we
Yes.
clarify
Yeah,
that.
definitely.
Amber, when you were there, what were the programs that were most significant to you as you recall?
Well, I'll have to preface this with it was over a few decades ago. But what I will say that sticks out tremendously as Glynis talks about, and clearly I'm sure it was much different in the 40s, and I certainly wasn't around then. However, as a child, from my purview, things look different, right? And we often underestimate how intense trauma can be for children when they're coming out of a dangerous environment. And so you often live your life a bit in a fog. And so I felt very much in a fog the few times that I'd resided there short term and a little bit longer. Again, things have changed, right? It's longer than 10.
Yeah.
It was longer than 10 days way back when. But what I would say is much like the Sprout program they have together now, when I was placed in the Sacramento Children's Receiving Home, there were shelter services for the younger kiddos before the Sprout program, and that would have been about the age that I was there with my younger brother. Additionally, my older sister had experienced a couple of stays or short-term quick visits while they found placement for us. But what I recall, one important thing to me, having been ripped from my mother's arms after extremely traumatizing events. What the Sacramento Children's Receiving Home did for me so long ago during one of those times, I did have the opportunity because of this immediate placement opportunity to be placed with my brother. And that was the Sacramento Children's Receiving Home is what made that possible. They were able to hold us there. until they found someone or a family who was willing to take a sibling set. Now, things are different now, right? The juvenile judicial system, they work much harder to keep siblings together, thankfully. But back then, that wasn't a focus. And if you can imagine, again, being ripped from your family's home, you only have your siblings. And so just being able to feel that I was able to be near, even though there was the girls' side and the boys' side, just to know that I was under the same roof as my brother. I felt like I could protect him, maybe even see him over the walls every so often, or passing through to the where the dining hall is.
This is a good point to actually identify what got you there, what happened, and how did you end up there? Who was it that brought you there? And did you come with your brother at the same time?
So, as a child, there were several instances in my childhood from the time I was an infant until I graduated from high school, but definitely in those early years, there were, my father had been involved in some pretty high profile crime. He certainly loved us. We had as odd as this sounds, we had a really loving family. Yeah. But what he was involved with posed great danger to my family. For that reason, my mother, as much as she loved him, we were oftentimes in situations where we were in protective custody. And so when people were after my father, when they located my mother's whereabouts, and there was an attempt or several attempts to harm her, what was a bloody situation and her ending up off on a gurney, my brother, sister, and I would, of course, be left at the hands of whatever first responder was there, and then sometimes, of course, a social worker. And so I would say the first time we were there, I want to say we were separated. My brother and I were separated, and that was incredibly traumatizing. There had also been other times where the receiving home was at capacity, unfortunately. And so that meant that my brother and I, at 2, 3 a.m. we spent some time in, I want to say, a police station, a police office, until they did find a place for us. But that's pretty much how we ended up there. And as I got older, I remember it looked different, it smelled different, and I understood the services different. But again, back to the point of it's hard to measure the trauma and the long-term impacts that trauma has on children. But the dedicated staff, that was certainly it was hugely apparent to me, as much as I did not want to be there, as much as I was worried about my mother, as much as I was worried about my siblings. There were these skilled staff members who, I imagine, just like your wife, and of course, Glynis, having volunteered there, they were there truly because they wanted to. They knew how to interact with traumatized children. They were delicate with their questions, and even as terrible, and one of my biggest memories, one of my strongest memories is that intake process, which is pretty brutal, but they found ways to make it less horrific for from a child who just witnessed their mom stabbed 17 times, I think it was what it was. But the staff is just remarkable. And then they found things, and I can't say that it took my mind off anything, but they found things to try to take your heartache for missing your mom from you, right? There were always games, and they would make time for individual therapies, but that you also didn't feel so much that you were different. You understood other children are going through something similar, right? And so even if it meant a week, 2 weeks, sometimes close to a month, that you were under this ceiling with many other children, it was almost, in some cases back then, a little bit better than being placed immediately in foster care, because you didn't feel quite like an alien, right? families are going through things, children are going through things. And so those card games, you get to interact with people who may have had a bad night the night before as well. They also had lots of, then I didn't understand this, but now I understand it. But through arts and building bears and, the different crafts that they had, it was very much therapeutic, a lot of the things that they did for the children. And that's about as much as I can speak on the programs then, because I didn't truly understand what was happening to me.
Sure. How old were you when you were there?
I'm guessing, but I think there was a time when I wasn't there with my brother, so I must have been under 5, and then I would guess about 7 or so. My little brother was definitely about the age of 2. And then once more, a little bit older, perhaps 11. So each time a child reunifies with a parent, it almost sets you back, I hate to say. You find yourself in new dangers. And then, of course, you no longer have that, what could have been a long-term foster care placement. And so the last time I was in the Sacramento Children's Receiving Home, I want to say perhaps I was about 11 or so. Okay. And that was, to your point, the Placer County opportunity, which would be so amazing if you get the funding for that. But when I was, my sister, brother, and I were all, they call them Sac County kids. You probably still call them that.
Still call them that.
But because of the high level of care that my sister, who unfortunately had a lot more trauma. She experienced a lot more than we did, being the older sister. She was moved to Placer County, and my brother was able to follow her. And because they were placed as Sac County kids in Placer County, I had the opportunity to also move to Placer County and still, because I was still a Sac County kid, still receive services from Sacramento County because you were so well-versed in those therapies and have been doing it for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Did you think at that, as best you can recollect, did it give you a sense of security, safety? Did you feel, okay, this environment's good, it's better than where I was?
Well, I would be lying if I said I didn't hate it. I hated every second of
being away from
life
your parents
at that moment. But what I will say, and now as an adult, having these beautiful, amazing full circle opportunities through a partnership with the Sacramento Children's Receiving Home. The last time I did a tour of the Sacramento Children's Receiving Home, I was blown away by how different it looked, right? What started with that initial building that I remember, and this just open grassy area with a playground, and you could see where the boys played, where the girls played, but all you could see is fence. And I don't know if you remember at our ribbon cutting me saying this. Yep. It was beautiful to see how much it had grown as a result of the partnership with Homemade Sacramento and the Children's Receiving Home. But what stopped my heart a little bit was I remember, as much as I hated to be there because of what was happening in my home and my heart, is what was once a chain link fence. And I remember looking onto the freeway. It was a clear shot of the freeway, and how just so aware that everyone on the other side of that fence is so free and no one's holding me back. When you go AWOL, you go AWOL. They cannot come back for you. And I mentioned this to Glynis, as much as I did not want to be there and I wanted to be with my mom, I would never leave because I felt safe for the first time in a long time. And so as an adult, I realized that I felt incredibly safe there. The dining hall, for example, all these little moments that gave me a sense of security and a sense of, home is a challenging word to use in any sense when you're going through that, but you did feel a sense of home, or just safety truly is the most important word here. But when we went back, when we visited once more for the ribbon cutting, that was all blocked off by these incredible buildings that were now there and provided shelter and services to more, now almost 80,000 youth. So that was quite special to me. One other thing, and I hate to go on and on about this, but you mentioned in the 40s it was the original intent was to provide shelter during the World War I. And when you use that word war, I just think of the war that is happening in some homes or in the minds of children. So it still, in a sense, to me, represents, shelter or respite from someone's war, especially for children.
No, is very good. And I can imagine if you feel somewhat captive, you're looking out at that fence going, just on the other side of the fence. Now that you don't see that, it doesn't feel the same, I would imagine, for the people that are, the children that are there, because they're looking across at other children in other rooms, doing something that children would do, or whether it's a playground or whatever the activity is that is taking place. Glynis, talk about the residences, because the facility is 6.5 acres. There's a lot of housing there for children. And how many rooms is it again?
Well, we could house 100 kids. So that would be a 2 to a bedroom.
Yep.
So that would do the math. I guess it's 50 bedrooms. But currently we're not utilizing it because of a number of changes to government and regulations. But yes, we have the ability. We could house 100 individuals on
So
our
the
campus.
capacity is there. And
the capacity
you
is
mentioned
still
a couple of times when you couldn't get in because they were full. And I know that demand for that service has not minimized. If anything, I mean, the population's grown, things are different. I would imagine that the demand is there probably in a greater need, in a greater way. So if at this point in time those rooms are vacant, you can take 16 children maximum at this point in time by law.
Right.
Where are they all going? What's happening to these children?
Yeah,
where do they go?
Yeah, a lot of the kids are going out of state. To be fair, there's also been part of the legislation has been to create more supports for families. So there are more supports for caregivers and relatives now, because I know when I first started my journey in my work, when Amber talks about how the kids had to be placed by boys and girls, they also didn't give the services to, say, grandparents or aunts and uncles that they do now. So the legislation has changed so that more kids are actually going to family members than they ever have been in the past. So that part of it was the good part of the legislation.
Well, it's encouraging to hear that they
that
are
the
going
legislation
to some
yeah.
place.
So because I would work with grandparents that would want their grandkids, but they couldn't afford the housing, they couldn't afford the supports and the food and all of that. Now, under this new legislation, they receive the same exact supports that foster parents receive, so they can get the proper housing and such. So I would say, yes, kids are going out of state, but they're also going to families. There are a lot more kids going to families, but there's still a need, and there's still a need for group care. And when you talk about a continuum of care, that means you have every level of care. Everything from families to group care. And none of us want kids to grow up in group care, but there's always a place for it when kids aren't ready to be in families, or families aren't ready for the kids to be at home. So as a continuum, that's my soapbox, is a continuum. You need to be able to offer all of those services.
Well, and the other part of it, Amber, you're a great testament to it. You came through the programs at the Children's Receiving Home. If that child is sent to a family member, they're not trained. They're not educated in all these programs, and the capacity that they've got to deal with that child who is traumatized is simply, the love and care of a family member,
right?
Which is good, but it's not everything else. And so I think that's something we have to consider as well.
And it could be destructive, for the family as well. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it could completely be overwhelming to a family, even though they're getting paid for it, and they have some compensation to support the extra child or two that are in that situation. That isn't serving the child.
Yeah, they are also offered training, but they have to accept it. So they do offer the training and resources for them.
Thank you for that.
Well.
And does training, do you do any training as part of the Children's Receiving Home for those families that are recipients of family members, children?
We don't currently, but it's one of the areas we would love to expand into.
If there was funding, perhaps.
Yes, exactly.
Well, we're going to get to that too in just a second, because this is the crux of the conversation.
Right.
We'll return to our conversation with Glynis Butler-Stone of the Children's Receiving Home and Amber Robbins right after these messages from those making this program possible.
We are really excited to be part of the family and contribute to the work that you all are doing. CORE provides fractional and interim executive services, along with comprehensive back office solutions that go into our client sites and do the work to give them the capacity they need in order to move through transitions, whether that's planned or unplanned. Or companies also work with our accounting and finance, back office solutions, human resources, technology, and administration. The reason why our back office solutions add value is because we save them time and money, anywhere from 20 to 30% of what they would spend on that back office solution. We work in it so they can actually work on it. CXORE.com and contact me directly at DTEAT@CXORE.com.
If you're interested in learning more about how CORE may help your organization, visit CXORE.com.
Hello, this is Scott Thomas with Cap Trust in our Sacramento office. I specialize in working with local nonprofits and associations. Annually, we survey private and public nonprofit organizations across the country to better understand challenges they see in today's environment. In our more recent survey, we heard concerns about proper board governance, mission-aligned investment, and how to implement alternative investments. If you would like a copy of the survey or to discuss your organization, look me up, Scott Thomas at captrust.com.
I'm thrilled to have Western Health Advantage partnering with us as they do so much to support so many nonprofit agencies in our community. As a truly local health plan, you'll find individual and family options, employer options, plans for CalPERS and Medicare Advantage. From medical services to pharmacy, health and wellness support, as well as behavioral health care, Western Health Advantage has a plan that fits what you need. As an employer, for profit or nonprofit business, individual or family, you can find more at westernhealth.com. Collaboration. This entity, especially after 80 years, doesn't operate in a vacuum. Who are some of the organizations that you find yourself collaborating often with?
We actually collaborate with a lot of our sister agencies that are foster family agencies, a lot of mental health treatment programs, domestic violence programs. And in fact, thanks to the Sacramento Region Community Foundation, we are leading a collaborative effort with a group of 9 local nonprofits that span everything from healthcare to mental health to foster care to really look at the gaps that we have in our service provision and fill those gaps. At the same time that we're looking to reinvent our campus because times have changed and funding has changed.
Well, and we're sitting across from a collaborator right here.
Yes.
As the executive director of Homemade, I know that you've been involved as well with a lot of the activity at the Children's Receiving Home.
Absolutely. Talk about full circle,
Yes.
right? Bringing my experience in the building industry now to something that I love and also understand the dire need for. It's been truly the greatest joy of my life to be able to in some way give back. Way back when, as I talk about the traumatizing experiences and all those that life experience I had, one of the things I think back to is my complete lack of awareness that anyone cared at all or that there were helpers, right? There were people who worked at a group home or who worked at a receiving home and provided and again, you're just kind of you're in autopilot. But you mentioned your couple of years of volunteer hours, the couple of years that you volunteered in the Point store. I remember that Point store so vividly and how special it was, and it seemed much bigger there. But again, knowing now knowing now through our partnership how many people contribute as volunteers, it's heartwarming to me, and I hope children now understand that there are so many helpers out there. But now as an adult, to be able to use my experience both professionally but also personally in my own life to help increase the capacity for them to serve in some way, whether it be by additional beds and rooms, but even the facilities, the gymnasium, to me that is the most special thing, and that makes me proud to go home to my kids after spending hours away from them when I could tell them that I'm doing something great and I'm partnering with someone who provided respite when I was going through a storm.
Mm-hmm. In terms of that collaborative part, I mean, that is part of this conversation too, is to draw some awareness because people just don't know. You know, they hear about it and they think it's good and they appreciate what happens at the Children's Receiving Home. They don't realize that there's 70 plus beds vacant every night. And it's not an accident. It is by
Right.
law.
Right.
So let's get into that part of the conversation, because truly that's the funding element of what's happened here.
Mhm.
And the funding changed, and the requirements and the capabilities of what you can do changed, and that was by law. So tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about the dollars and cents.
Right. There was several pieces of legislation, one at the federal level for campus-based programs that have housing for children, and that is the one that has now limited us to being able to serve 16 children, yes, 16, on our facility, and it's caused a number of our programs across the state to close because that's just not a sustainable number. Then there's also been the statewide legislative changes we talked about briefly, moving more money into preservation, moving more money into us giving money to families. And moving away from congregate care. Sadly, group care has been villainized over the years, and there's a number of national groups that are working to close group care nationally, and there are some programs that should be closed, but not in California. California has been so well regulated and so well managed, and so you don't have the abuse and the trauma and the childhood deaths and such that you do in other states. So those pieces of legislation have affected us to the point that we're now looking to reinvent our campus because we do have a 6-acre campus. We were built to house 100 kids or 100 people. Many of the buildings are sitting dormant. Some are being used as offices. But we have a housing crisis, and we have
70
housing.
some places for housing.
We have housing,
which is
yeah, and so that's why we're looking at reinventing ourselves. We don't see much change in the landscape politically. There's no will to go back to shelters other than very small ones. There's no will to have kids living in group care at the national level or the state level. And so it's like, okay, we're a resilient organization and we've been nimble over the years. So now's our time to let's look at what else, where are the gaps? Where else can we potentially provide housing? And one area that we have identified is for transition-aged youth, which are youth I call them kids. They're not kids. They're 18 to 24-year-olds.
Foster youth maybe in emancipation. They have to go someplace. They need someplace to go.
And so Senator Ashby got this legislation so that all foster youth have funds to go to college, and now they're sleeping in their cars. So we really need to be looking at that housing, and can the receiving home pivot, still keeping our shelter, but maybe be able to serve transition-age youth also that needs housing.
As one option, and then for anybody else, as we look at these other organizations that have a need for short-term housing, recovered victims of domestic violence, recovered victims from sex trafficking, whatever it may be, there seems to be an opportunity to fulfill a need.
Yes.
It's there. It's just got to put the right pieces together to be identified and then funded. And that funding is out there for that. We see it in so many different places.
Yeah, that's the issue, is the funding.
Let's talk about the budget a bit. What is the operating budget for the organization?
Currently, it's right around $9 million.
Okay. And what was it historically?
It's been as high as $15 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the past.
And so you've got these 74 additional rooms or whatever. That's a lot of maintenance and operational expense just to keep the doors opened.
Yes, it's about $2 million a year just to keep the lights on.
Okay.
And that's without anything breaking.
Yeah, I'm not talking about staff.
Right.
And if I'm not mistaken, it's
not talking staff, no.
It's all getting 20 plus years old or whatever that was when I first met my wife there.
Yes.
When it was being built. So as we look at that and we look at the funding situation, what are some of the elements of that funding that you see today as the most opportunistic? In other words, where could that money come from? Is it sitting in a state pool? Is federal money? Probably not at all. But is it within other organizations? Is it a fee for service?
Well, we've long relied on contracts with Sacramento County, and they have been very good to us. But the reality is that then they set the need, and then they put it out to bid for providers to bid on the contracts. And so then when the contracts go away, they're gone. So what we're trying to do is really expand and look at engagement with corporations, with foundations, with individual donors who want to be part of this safety net for kids and want to be part of filling these gaps that we know are there. We know kids are sleeping on the streets. We know they're sleeping in cars. How can we help with this housing crisis for our kids? So really calling on the community and corporations, foundations, and donors.
And if I may, if you can only imagine the opportunity through private funding to move the needle a bit more quickly, but then also just so much less strings attached, right? You could do more in a quicker amount of time, but then also sustainability, right? You're not bound by contracts and change. If you, and I come from, and sure I might be partial, I come from the most philanthropic industry there is. I certainly know there are other industries that are philanthropic, but we pride ourselves in our access to private funding and the sustainability there. And this is such a generous community, and there are mutual benefits in giving in this way, not only for the building industry, for example, whether you, and this really important man in my industry taught me this, whether you purchase a piece of land and anticipate building a year, 10 years or 100 years from now, you're still invested in that land, right? This is your community. You can't sell homes. You can't do business if you're not preserving the health and safety of your community.
And it starts with children, because children become the community as they grow.
Right. Well, and you hit on the transition age foster youth. I am so passionate about all children, but the opportunity with this age group, right? If I think his name is Josh Shipp. If you ever get the opportunity to, and I'm probably butchering his name, but to watch his, he has this speech, and he uses a jar of marbles to describe the age, right? Each marble represents an age in a child's life. And as that child ages, there's so much less room left in that jar. For this age group, you have just moments. This is like a second opportunity to get through to this age group before they emancipate or age out of the foster care system with no one to fall back on, right? And so the opportunity to provide services to these individuals and make them available to them, that is like gold. That is gold to our community. That is helping not only to keep them out of the adult system of care, but helping to keep them from having children back in our children's system of care. And the more we look at addressing these issues in that regard, with the long term in our mind, and considering the continuum of care, that to me is this amazing sweet spot and opportunity that if we overlook, shame on us.
Right.
It's right there in front of us.
Well, that's our future generations. We have to address it. So this is a pivotal part of the conversation. I'm going to give you an opportunity to dream a little bit now.
Okay.
So everything's great. Somebody says, we love what you're doing. We see the opportunity. Glynis, we've got a blank check for you. What do you do with it? What's it look like?
Well, I envision our 6 acres being vibrant and active, serving children, serving families, being like a hub of supports and services, have our housing components as well as our mental health, our outpatient components. You talked about like parenting classes, parenting support groups. We've also been envisioning what's called the Life Academy for young adults so that they have a place to come and learn about, besides financial literacy and how to do laundry and, all those things that a lot of kids that don't have parents growing up or don't get that support need. How to clean a toilet,
How to boil a pot of water. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, how to cook, how to, what do you buy at the grocery store? All of those kinds of things. So that would be my vision, is to really have this robust hub of services and vibrant that could be welcoming to all aspects of the community.
Like a life training
Yes.
resource.
Yes.
This is what you need to do.
Yeah.
Because truly, so many children don't ever learn that because they
Right.
don't learn it from their parents because their parents aren't doing it.
Yeah.
And it's just the basics, the necessities of life,
Yeah.
what you need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to clean up every so often. You have to run that vacuum cleaner. You have to do the
Yeah.
dishes. You're not going to have a dishwasher to start, probably.
Yeah.
And there's dignity and responsibility.
Truly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I think that's part of what I was hearing from the conversation. Not only for the families, but for the children, there's a sense of dignity that you want to instill so that it's not this shroud of, oh my gosh, I was in a receiving home. I mean, Amber, I applaud you for being here because as an alumna of the receiving home, some people may not want to address it. I was there. That was a bad time in my life. But clearly something good came out of it.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because one thing I didn't mention, and I've shared with you quite a bit, and now that I am more vocal with my story because I recognize that it actually helps people. I spent most of my life in foster care, keeping it a secret, right? If someone asked, who are those people who look very different from you, much older, who are all family friends, there is such an intense feeling of shame and embarrassment, right? As a young child, it was more shame and just trying to be good and walk on eggshells and not become even more burdensome on others than you already are. But then and eventually it develops into a pretty intense feeling of embarrassment. And now as an adult, I can recognize that as I share my story and, now that I have children of my own, especially, I would be so saddened if they felt shame for anything that the adults in their life, through letting them down, put them through. But just that shame alone, when you talk about this, and you've mentioned to me your dream in different words, but in those words you just described, that sounds like such a beautiful place for someone who has experienced trauma and who might otherwise have feelings of shame, right? To be around other people who are also struggling or overcoming some intense struggle, just to be around services with people who know what they're going through, who've gone through things that they've gone through. That sounds like the most healing and dignified environment. And I pray that happens soon for you.
Thank you.
Which leads us perfectly to the next question of, what is the greatest need? And I think I can answer that, but I'm going to have you explain it, because we just spent the last 20, 25 minutes talking about it.
Yes.
But let's put it out there as the ask.
Yes.
I mean, the reality of where we are today to what needs to be done.
Yeah, the reality is we need funding.
Yes.
And the reality is that we need the community to come forward, and we need to find private funding, grants, private donors, corporations that will be able to fund the bridge right now, because it takes money to be able to reinvent the campus, to bring new programs. It's going to take funding to be able to hire additional leadership, to be able to have adequate qualified staffing and pay them properly, which has always been an issue for us in the nonprofit world, provide training. So yes, we're really looking for funding to be able to bridge, to build these programs and to build this hub on our campus again.
And is there a capital campaign that's in place or being put in place at some point in the future?
It's more of a fundraising campaign than
Got
a
it.
capital campaign at this
Okay.
point. So yes, this particular year we are looking to raise $1.5 million.
Okay.
And that's going to give us the bridge funding to be able to work in this collaboration of these 9 different nonprofits to really reinvent our campus and look at what the gaps are in service provision, so that we're continuing to provide the care that the kids need in our community.
And that'll take us, that's anticipated through 2026 or into?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. That'll get us into 2026.
Excellent.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask you a personal question now, because as the executive director of an organization that is going through all these organizations, anything that's servicing children or food insecurity or mental health or foster youth, all of you have this weight on your shoulders that never goes away. You think about it all the time, and you think about, how can I help? What can I do differently? So-and-so just came in. I know that child now, and you carry it with you all the time. How do you get away from it for a break? What do you do to unstress for a second, de-stress?
Yeah.
Just
Well, I have to say, honestly, I don't think I ever stop thinking about the work and the receiving home and really what's happening with the kids, and our funding and our sustainability. So I can't say I completely disconnect. But if I want to fill up my cup, then I love to dance. And so,
any particular type?
Well, I tap dance for one.
You're kidding.
No.
Did you
That's
know
amazing.
this?
I did not know know that. This is
Shoot,
amazing.
I wish we had a board in here.
yeah,
We'd have you do a little tap. We'd have you do something.
And I love Zumba and aerobics and any kind of movement. So, I mean, that's really what fills my cup. If I want a more quiet moment, this last year, it's the best thing. I would highly recommend it, is we put in a water feature in our backyard, and it's this little babbling brook. My husband always wanted one like that, and I thought, well, this is silly. It's the coolest thing. I can go out there and just sit, and it's so calming.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So that's where I do a lot of my thinking, is sitting by my little babbling brook.
Well, now I have a much better understanding of why things are going so well in this process, is because you know how to tap dance.
Yeah, I do.
You're tap dancing all the way through every bit of funding and discussions and collaborative. We'll have to get a little more of that somewhere
Okay.
along the line. And at some point in time, we're going to
Maybe
get
when you raise that $1.5 million, there's
Yes.
a tap
tap
dancing
dance out
video.
the Archer stage.
Yes,
That's
I will.
exactly what's going to happen. That's exactly what's going to happen. The next question is really just about what one can do. Where do we go? Where's the best place to find the information, to learn a little bit more about the organization, about the need,
Yeah.
the opportunity to give?
Yes. So the best place to go is to our website,
Okay.
which is crhkids.org.
And we'll put that in the show
We'll put
notes
that
as
in the
well to
show.
make it
Yes.
simple.
So that has all of the information about us, how you can give, what we need, and that's the best spot to go.
And that's easy.
That's
I love
easy.
that. I
Yes.
love that.
Yeah.
How about any closing thoughts?
Well, in thinking about doing this podcast, I really want to thank you for the opportunity, and thank you, Amber, for joining me, because this means a lot to me, more than you probably will
Well,
ever
thank
know.
you for having me.
Yeah. So I just want to share that there's so many kids out there that need us, and there's still kids that we could be serving. And in our 80-year history, what we've been doing this last year is really embracing our legacy, and we've been really embracing our name. And so to receive means to accept, means to welcome, it means to bear the weight. And we really, without community support, are not going to be able to continue to receive children without our community coming together. And we really want to be able to give kids the opportunity to heal, to find hope, and to become all the greatness that they can be.
Mm-hmm. Amber?
How do you follow that? Well,
You
Yeah, she's our
You
greatness.
are that.
She's our greatness.
my closing thought would just be to think again, when I was sitting in those shoes so many years ago, not knowing that there were people who cared. It truly is. I'm grateful to you for, to your point, Jeff, the emotional toll that it takes on you. I think each of us are created differently, and some of our hearts are so big that it's a double. There's greatness that comes with it, but also you have to learn how to hurt quite deeply, and so that level of pain is certainly, well, it's worth the amount of love that you're able to give children and the world. I just want to thank you for and your staff and anyone else and donors who are willing to carry that burden of pain so that children don't have to feel like a burden, right? And so just thank you is the only word that comes to my mind.
Well, and I'm about to do the same thing. So I opened with a personal story in relationship to this treasured, valued, and very necessary community for our children that was different from the stories we just heard in the conversation. The true value is much deeper than the fondness for me because it exists in a different way, and it's much more impactful than most could ever comprehend. Amber, you more so than anybody else in the room. I look at you today, and what a compliment you are to the Children's Receiving Home as a product of somebody who has gone through that and has elevated themselves into the community to give back through another nonprofit organization. I mean, that's amazing.
Thank you.
And Glynis, for what you and the team and the staff and everybody involved in the Children's Receiving Home, I mean, for the many years that you've been involved with it, is just incredible. So thank you for what you do as well.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If what you heard moved you, please reach out to that organization and do what you can to help. If you like and appreciate what we're doing to support local nonprofits, please give us a positive review, subscribe, and share. If you're a nonprofit with an interest in participating in an episode, you can reach me at jeff@hearmenowstudio.com. Once again, we're grateful for the businesses who have made this program possible. CapTrust, fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations. You can find them in Sacramento, Roseville, and Folsom, captrust.com. And Western Health Advantage, a full-service healthcare plan for individuals, employer groups, and families. westernhealth.com.